Ladies and gentlemen, welcome back to the Cringy Movie Collection podcast. You know, I wanted to do a really short intro again, like we did in the past once, which was just silly and fun. But then it occurred to me that this is going to be a very short episode of the podcast anyway.
Because it's going to be cringy.
It's like a sequel, and usually the movies that we don't like that much, we have less to say about. So it's like...
Oh, you already spoiled that we didn't really like this movie.
Who likes Rush Hour 2? This is Rush Hour 2, by the way. All right, we're talking about Rush Hour 2, the movie from 2001, sequel to Rush Hour, directed by Brett Ratner once again, with Jackie Chan and Chris Tucker as the main characters, the police buddy people, the police cop, the cop buddies. There we go. Mm-hmm. Now I can speak.
Cop bros.
Cop bros. That would be a better title. We talked in the previous episode about how, like, we don't really know why you would call this movie Rush Hour, other than it's a weird, obscure reference to something that happens in a movie. But
And
the
also,
second you
I
have a
think
sequel...
that in that movie, they just put that line because they had to put the title in.
It's unclear, yeah. But, like, now you have a sequel that has absolutely nothing to do with Rush Hour.
Even though they are in Hong Kong for, I think the first third of the movie, at least, and it's very trafficked.
Okay.
There are chickens.
So this movie basically picks up at the end of where the other one left off. Carter, played by Chris Tucker, takes a vacation in China with, well, I guess
in Hong Kong.
Hong Kong, technically not China. Oh no, I went into the political quagmire that is Chinese foreign politics and what is it, like imperialism?
Yeah, they're in Hong Kong. Well, this is in British imperialism and Chinese border policies.
It's a big mess.
But
Anyway,
they're in Hong Kong.
they go to Hong Kong, and Jackie Chan, who plays Detective Lee, is basically doing his job, and meanwhile Carter is trying to have a vacation next to him.
He's frustrated that he's not doing a lot of vacation stuff
not
with
hanging
Lee
out.
because they work all the time.
So they, as you would expect, end up in all kinds of hijinks. Carter is trying to have a vacation. Lee is just going on about his business and ending up in fights. So fighting ensues, and we eventually get a big case. There's a guy blowing up an embassy and later police station, and they suspect a man by the name of Ricky Tan, who is apparently being usurped by other people in his gang, and they follow them around. Eventually they follow a big casino tycoon type of guy.
Yes, because if you want to find the crime lord, you have to find the rich white guy.
The old white guy.
Old white guy.
In Rush Hour, the bad guys. I don't remember Rush Hour 3 that well, but I'm sure if there's an old white guy. I mean, in this movie...
Is there a Rush Hour 3?
Yes.
Oh my gosh.
And there's a fourth one possibly being made now, so that's weird. But in this movie, there's actually a decoy old white guy early on in the movie. it's like they kind of tease like they're going to do the same thing as in the first movie again, but then it's just slightly different. Anyway, the trail leads them to Las Vegas, which is where they end up, and they find out that Ricky Tan, who was shot by one of his associates at the beginning of the movie, is actually not dead. He faked his own death, and he is the guy behind it all, and it's a plot to create fake money. And Carter and Lee stop them.
Yeah.
And it's all loud and silly.
Yes. And they win, and then they go to Madison Square Garden to see the
Madison Garden, Square Madison.
With the credit scenes, there are the bloopers, and apparently Jackie Chan was not very good at saying Madison Square Garden.
Yes, as you know, all the Jackie Chan movies famously have the outtakes at the end of the movie. And in fact, in this movie, the thing that I absolutely loved were the outtakes, because this was the loudest I laughed, and it was also a sign that the movie was over. So
That's not a good thing for the movie.
yeah, but it is very funny, that sequence. I think what I particularly like is that Chris Tucker comes across as like is always in character.
Yeah.
Except that he calls Jackie Chan Jackie a bunch of times in the movie.
It seems that they had to redo a lot of scenes because it just called him Jackie Chan instead of Lee.
Yeah, and then at some point they throw Ricky Tan out of the window, and Chris Tucker looks down and goes like, "Ooh, he ain't gonna be in Rush Hour 3." And I think that's very funny too.
Yeah. Well, I think that Chris Tucker is the of what I absolutely love about this movie, even more than like the last movie.
Okay. He rescues the chicken.
Yes, I think that my favorite, what I absolutely love about this movie is the scene in which he rescues a chicken because he gets lost while he's trying to find. So earlier in the movie, we have seen that they go to a massage parlor, but actually they're not there to get massages, but they're there.
Well, Jackie Chan is trying to talk to Ricky Tan.
Yes, and this is why they went to the massage parlor.
Lee wanted him to be out of the way.
Yeah.
And Carter just gets himself involved.
But then he just goes away and he wants to have a good time and he's trying to find a massage parlor again. This time to have a massage.
No, it's because he left his like wallet at the massage parlor.
Oh, really?
Yeah.
Okay.
Because they end up running on the
with the passport. Yes.
They're thrown onto the highway naked by Ricky Tan's goons. And they go to the police station to get clothes, and then Carter's like, damn, massage parlor still has my papers.
Yeah. Okay. So he's trying to find a massage parlor, and he gets lost in a Hong Kong market, and he's starting to it tries to talk to a lady that has live chickens and dead chickens, and it's quite apparent that the dead chickens were previously, very, very previously alive.
Very recently, yeah.
Yes. And so she thinks that she wants a chicken, but he doesn't want a live chicken, and she was starting to kill the chicken, and he's like, no, you don't kill the chicken, step away from the chicken. And then we see him shortly after with like just a cage with a chicken.
Yeah.
Yes, and I like it that he saves the chicken.
What's funny also is that he walks around Hong Kong, an enormous city. Yeah. He's from LA. He should know better than that, but whatever. He walks around and he just yells, "Heaven on earth, massage parlor," to random Chinese people. Like they would know where he is, where the massage parlor is, and would give him directions. And he ends up, going into like a clothing store and buying nicer clothes and buys a chicken, and it's pretty weird.
Yes, but he saves the chicken, and I think it's fine. It's fun, and I think that he's a very, very good in these movies. More like the driving force of the movie. Mm-hmm. Because what I actually hate about this movie is that I enjoyed in Rush Hour 1. It was my first Jackie Chan movie. How much like all these fighting scenes were choreographed and you can almost like see the dance. And there were not so many of these scenes. There were maybe a couple, but not.
Well, there were action scenes, but they were like so much less focused
on the Jackie Chan.
No, in general, like it's just like they're just like random action scenes. Like it just doesn't feel like they had an idea for a cool scene and then they made it. It was more like Jackie Chan can climb elegantly on bamboo, and so we'll do that. It's like if you think about what is a cool action moment in the movie, it's like the only thing that stands out is that there's an extended sequence of Jackie Chan being tied up with duct tape when he has a little explosive in his mouth, and his hands, he can't use his hands because they're tied up with duct tape. And so that's like a gimmick, and so that's memorable. But other than that, it's nothing. I mean, it actually feels like they rehash a lot of things. There's a scene where they use a carpet to get a gun out of the way of a bad guy, which is exactly what happens in the first movie. There's just a lot of things that seem like we've already seen them, and kind of we've seen them better.
Yeah.
There's so many like stunts. Like he slides through a cashier window at some point.
That is cool.
Well, we see in the outtakes that was very difficult. Yeah. But the truth is, when it happens on screen, you don't go like, "What an incredible stunt."
I thought so.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay. I mean, I thought it was cool, but it was like it's not that big a deal compared to, in the first movie, he jumps into a room onto a gun, flicks up the holster that is at his feet, and picks up the gun out of the holster, all while handcuffed to a fucking steering wheel.
Yes.
You know what I mean? Like
Yes.
that's way more insane and interesting.
Yeah, but I remember that I thought that is a very tiny hole in which you have to jump through, so it's like kind of difficult.
Okay.
But that's the only cool thing that it really did, because even like
They zip line at the
bamboo,
end.
yes, but I think because there is always like the counter. So in Rush Hour 1, there was the guy with the frosted tips.
Yeah.
And
fake
he's like,
Juntao.
he's like the main mean guy that they like run around fighting. And this time is a woman that kicks a lot, but she also uses a lot of explosives. So you don't have a lot of good like fighting scenes because there is always a bomb involved.
I mean, the one thing that I liked a little bit was in the kind of towards the end of the movie, in the big casino fight, there are little flourishes here and there. Specifically, two things come to mind. When Jackie Chan gets the bomb out of his mouth, it's a little ball-shaped thing, and he throws it away, and it lands on a roulette wheel, and it lands on the zero. That's a nice flourish to make it more interesting, other than he threw the bomb away and it exploded. And similarly, when Carter fights the lady who kicks a lot, they use swords, and I think Carter uses a roulette wheel to protect himself, and again, the lady stabs him into the zero of the roulette wheel. Nicer than just nothing. Also, that's probably difficult to do, like to make that look, unless they filmed it backwards or something. I mean, I don't know. But still, like, at least that would be an interesting filmmaking thing. I didn't notice any tricks like that. But anyway, it looked cool, and it was another one of these little things. You're like, oh, that's neat. But in the grand scheme of things, they don't matter. They don't really increase the value of
But
this
also
experience.
the script like sounded a little bit like something we've already seen in Rush Hour 1. Like a lot of the jokes about him being African American and the other guy being Chinese like sounded like we had another version in Rush Hour 1 that actually feels a bit less less racist for some reason. Maybe.
When we talked about this movie the first time, you can go check out the episode, we did mention that this movie feels like it does racist stereotypes, but just about in a way that you can go like, oh, that's acceptable as a joke.
Yes.
That's not quite offensive.
But now you did it again, and so it's kind of like it starts becoming a little bit more questionable.
It feels more racist somehow.
Yeah.
And also, it doesn't help that there's way more of that kind of exploitation. Like, there's just a big boob scene at the beginning of the movie.
Oh, yes, and when they just watch the girl in the underwear.
It just keeps going. I have some suspicions that, these kind of additions are ideas that Brett Ratner just finds really funny. The movie overall feels a little more slimy, a little more like inappropriate, and not as much in a funny way. And maybe part of it is that we have seen this dynamic before, so now we're like friends with these guys, and they can't just make these terrible jokes anymore.
But also, we already heard the joke once. And it's like, okay, this is like borderline inappropriate, but I'm going to let it slide for like this time. Yeah. But like, 3 strikes, you're out. You're starting to be a bit racist if you keep like just milking these kind of jokes.
Yeah. I was actually disappointed that this movie goes back to the US. I thought it would make perfect sense to do the inverse of Rush Hour and stay in, not mainland China, whatever, in Hong Kong. And like basically make Carter the fish out of water, and Lee the kind of the liaison. And it's interesting because Lee is actually competent, whereas Carter is, even in LA, he was a patsy. So like it would have been a different dynamic, but it also would have been in a different place, and it would have been like the logical continuation of this. And then halfway through we just go back, and now it's Las Vegas, which doesn't even feel that different from the finale of the first movie, where it's like a big, like they're in Chinatown of Los Angeles.
I think that the problem with having it in Hong Kong is that even though Lee's English is not optimal, he can still navigate in the US.
Yeah.
So you can have scenes with him alone. Why Tucker would be just helpless in Hong Kong because he cannot speak the language.
But that was
So
funny. So you
yeah,
can work with that, I think.
not for a full movie. Well,
Yes, you can.
maybe yes.
Because make it visual then. It's a movie anyway. It's not about
Yeah.
the dialogue. I think it also makes perfect sense that, in contrary to Lee, when Carter goes to a foreign country, he will use little traveling dictionary and read from it,
Yeah.
rather than just know a little bit of the language like Lee does when in the first movie when he goes to the US. I don't know.
I don't know.
Do you think? Do you? I mean, this movie also, like when we talk about the comedy, has a lot of rehash, like you said, like the racist stuff, but also like there's literally references, like when Lee says to Carter, "Do you know, understand the words that are coming out of my mouth?"
Yes.
And it's funny because they add a little thing on top where Carter says like, "Hey, nobody understand the words
Yeah.
that come out of your mouth," but still, like that is a meta joke. That's a joke because we've seen the first
Yes.
movie, and it's a better joke if you know that was like an improvised line then, and it's like something that people would quote, and that's why it's in there. I feel that this movie does absolutely nothing better than the first movie did. Now,
Yes.
you felt like you liked Carter better in this movie.
Well, because I think that since I didn't know Jackie Chan, even though I appreciate Carter, that is a comical character. I haven't seen previously movies with comical characters,
Yeah.
but I have never seen something like what Jackie Chan does. So I was more concentrating on watching what Jackie Chan does.
Okay.
And so this time, Jackie Chan wasn't doing much of his usual things, and I could concentrate more on Carter. That it was a very nice character already in the first movie, but it's like more familiar to me. So maybe it was not my main focus when I watched Rush Hour for the first time.
Okay. I think, the comedy is rehashed and it's fine, but it's not funnier than the first one. In many ways, it's not as funny because the first one has the benefit of, like characters getting to know each other, which is...
Yeah, they didn't like each other at first, and now they
Right.
like each other.
And they do try, and it works. In his movie, the opening gives you hope because it's like the war scene in the first movie where they're singing in this one in the car to the Beach Boys, and it's like, yeah, these guys are adorable. Like, it's great. But then, like, there's nothing outstandingly funny after that. Again, the funniest thing in this movie is the outtakes at the end. Although there seems to be a fake phone call going on. Like
that
it seems
kind of ruined it
staged.
for me. I like the karaoke scene when basically they are in a bar, like they are in the
Really?
gangster club.
Okay.
Yeah, because it's like something that Carter would do. Is like
Yeah.
there was a Chinese or Hong Kongian man trying to sing an American song, and Carter gets all disgusted by his ineptitude.
Yeah.
He just
does his
starts
best Michael
showing off,
Jackson.
and he shows off his like dance move to the
Yeah.
ladies, and he really wanted to get some action.
That's
in
why I
Hong
didn't like
Kong,
the scene. It's
so-
because it felt like there's just more boobs on display almost.
Well, I was liking that finally he just like is trying and maybe succeeding in getting the ladies with his own talents of like
Okay.
being a goofball and not really
And
with
it is kind
lines.
of like a foil to, in the first movie, we have the biker club where Carter goes there to talk to someone and Jackie Chan gets into trouble.
Yes.
And this one is where Jackie Chan, Lee, goes to talk to someone, not to talk to them, but like to spy on guys and find someone. And Carter gets... Well, he's more like he's getting Lee into trouble, but...
Yeah,
so-
but he's almost getting into trouble because the Chinese men that are with all the girls are not liking all the attention to.
But all in all, this movie is less funny.
Yeah.
It's wasting Jackie Chan in terms of action.
Yeah, that totally.
The story is fine. Like the first movie didn't have a particularly good story. This one doesn't either. It's fine. It doesn't need that if the other elements are in place. But just like those are the two things you'd expect: good action, good comedy, and neither of them pay off. And this is a discussion that I think we have occasionally because we have different attitudes towards sequels. Whereas I'm pretty much okay with sequels coming out, and I don't feel like they taint, the original. But in this case, I have to say, when we were gonna watch Rush Hour, I thought it was gonna be much worse than it ended up being because I associate the whole series with Rush Hour.
Okay.
And it makes a little bit of sense if you think about how little the plot matters. So like it's just all these movies are like interchangeable in terms of the story, so you don't really remember the individual things. But overall, like it's such a low point.
So I'm not a person that likes sequels unless they like. I think like with the first 3 Star Wars or even with the first 3 Indiana Jones, they already had more or less the idea of having a story arc and having like
What?
no.
Not for Indiana Jones.
For Star Wars, for sure, they had like this is a story and it has 3 chapters and each chapter is a movie, and then like I'm okay with sequels.
Well, there's also the possibility that even if you just make a story, you might have other stories to tell for these characters. These characters might have other places to go, and that's fine too. Like The
Yes.
Godfather and The Godfather Part 2. Like,
But I also think that these two were meant to be together. Like there's just the Godfather Part 3 that was added.
and that's fine too, though. Like The Godfather Part 3 is fine too as a sequel.
I don't know. I think that if it starts as a project, I'm okay with sequels. And if it doesn't start as a project and is a good standalone movie, I think that it's easy for like people that make movies to be how do you say tempted to find to make a new one, and it's very, very rare that it's gonna be good.
Okay. But never mind the execution, right? Like, let's say Rush Hour 2 delivered more of that comedy and more of that action. Like, that is something that, like, the whole, like, for a movie like Rush Hour, all you want is more of that, and it should be possible to deliver that. Now, if you feel like you don't want to make a sequel, would you just like make another kind of movie like that, but you cast Chris Tucker, you cast Jackie Chan, but it's not a continuation of Rush Hour? Or what would be like a proper way in your eyes to do
I
this?
don't feel like you had a good idea. It was Rush Hour. It was this kind of thing. So if you want something similar, you just rewatch Rush Hour and then you wait until you get to the new idea that it's nice and standalone.
Okay. But there's a movie called Shanghai Noon, and it's Jackie Chan and Owen Wilson in the Wild West, right?
Oh my! I want to watch it.
That's like Rush Hour in the Wild West, right? And that movie is fine. Like, we can watch it sometime. Like,
Wow.
it's a good time. And wow. But like that's the formula, right? There was also like Eddie Murphy and Robert De Niro as cops. It was Showtime, I think was the movie. That came out in 2002 or so. Like, this idea, like, you can just do hundreds of these, but I feel like if chemistry is really good between two cast members, why not reuse them, and why not?
Well, but
Look,
then you
because-
have to tread very lightly, like, and be very careful. If you wanna like exploit the chemistry already existing, you have to be sure that it's as good or better than the other one, and not just like, oh yes, they have a good chemistry, people will love them, let's just do another one.
This is
just
what
for-
Rush Hour 2 feels like. It feels phoned in, because I think simply for the reason that Rush Hour is not about the story that it's telling, in this case, it's actually a low-risk situation. You're not tainting the wonderful story of Rush Hour. You're not even tainting the chemistry, because it's the same chemistry. Like, the things that you liked about the first one are still in this one. They're just like, it's almost like, oh, they worked so well last time, I guess you don't have to make much of an effort to do it again.
I think that this is what my problems with sequels a lot is, that it seems that for the people making them, the stakes are lower because the characters, the setting, whatever it is for that
complacent.
particular movie, it's already loved. So you like, the stakes are not low. The stakes are low.
Okay.
Well, to me, it should feel the opposite. The stakes are high because these are loved characters. It's a love setting. It's a loved thing. So you have to treat it like something fragile.
Right. Maybe we'll talk about good sequels when we get to 22 Jump Street, which is a sequel that works, and it's a sequel that,
Because there is 21 Jump Street.
Oh, you're unfamiliar with 21 Jump Street?
I am unfamiliar.
21 Jump Street is a TV series with Johnny
Okay.
Depp, and it was rebooted as a movie by the guys who made the Lego Movie, and it was I think it was like written or at least produced or something. Like Jonah Hill was very involved in making that movie, and it's really good. And they made a sequel, and that movie works because it's a sequel. Let's put it that way.
Okay.
I mean, it's literally called 22 Jump Street, and like they move across the street. Like
Okay.
it's stupid as fuck, but it's great. Anyway, we will talk about that when we get to it. In terms of the script, one thing that I think worked that I didn't see coming is that Ricky Tan is alive. That comes out of nowhere. And I think there's some credit to a movie that is, so simply written that they can surprise you. It's not a big deal because...
Yeah, and it makes sense, like, if you think it backwards, because Ricky Tan was the guy that killed Jackie Chan's father, so it kind of feels like anticlimactic that he just gets shot on a boat by his accomplices.
Yeah.
So it makes sense that he's alive, but yes, I was not anticipating it.
And part of it is that this whole like Jackie Chan's dad thing. I mean, like Jackie Chan's dad is in the first movie as well as kind of this looming presence of why he has this drive to do his job as a cop. But in this movie, it feels a little more contrived. It's just like, let's bring his dad back into this. Which I like less, but I did like that Ricky Tan then is like revealed to be still here. I thought that was like, oh damn, so he is the big villain after all. Because like there was some doubts at the beginning of the movie. When he gets
Yes.
shot, you're like, oh, actually maybe he was trying to do good.
Yes, but I have to say that now that I think about it, I was not expecting him to be alive, but I was not so surprised, like shocked, because at that point in the movie, I was already disengaged with it.
This movie feels a little random, like the chicken thing. Like the chicken is never seen again. It just like the cab driver steals the chicken for some reason, and or like the Snoopy tattoo, which feels like it's a setup for something.
I thought that it was some kind of secret, society
Right? No,
thing.
it's just so that Jackie Chan can say, "I love Snoopy,"
Yeah.
which is a funny joke, but it would have maybe legitimized the scene a little bit more because it's really just like the film staring at a lady's butt.
Yeah.
So if at least the tattoo that's there would have played a role in the movie, you could
Yeah.
have justified it a little bit better.
Yes.
Other than you wanted to make a joke about Jackie Chan being horny. There's a lot of these kinds of little things where, like, again, it feels a bit like an unfinished script. Maybe it's a good sign that it took a few more years to write Rush Hour 3, to maybe tie things together a little
Or
bit.
maybe they
neater.
had to convince them to come back.
Yeah, maybe it was a money question.
How was
I don't know.
it perceived?
This movie, I think, was very successful financially and wasn't criticized well, which is also why it's like successfully, like it's financially the most successful movie in the series.
Yeah, because people liked Rush Hour, and so
Yeah.
they went to the theater to see Rush Hour too.
And it was so much worse.
so,
Yeah, this is really a good example for a bad sequel. Like, not like offense. They didn't try anything new. They didn't try to reinvent it or anything. They just did the same thing but worse, and that's what we get. Yeah. So I didn't say it, so I'll say it here. The thing that I absolutely hate is how much like sexist shit is in this movie.
Yeah.
It makes me uncomfortable because like, I don't know, I still get excited when I see boobs, but like, it's like I feel so exploited, like because I don't want to enjoy this, but there's a weird primal part of me that sees it and goes ooh, and so then the overall result of that is I'm uncomfortable, right? Because I feel bad
You're so
about
cute.
this thing, but also, like Dwight would say, a little bit of blood rushed into my penis.
Yeah, like to me, just feels like yes, one of those late '90s, early 2000s media, like either movies or TV shows or everything. That is just like this is how women are portrayed in those
Yeah.
years.
Yeah. Poor lady. I don't remember her name even.
The one that looks like Sandra
Sandra
Bullock.
Bullock look-alike. Because I thought she was a beautiful woman. I should have looked her up
Yeah,
and
but
see what
she
else she was
didn't
in.
have
But
a very good character in
no,
this
like
movie.
but her acting was cool.
Yeah.
Like she was like taunting the kick lady in the car.
Yeah.
And so like I think she was
And
convincing as an
also,
actress, but then she was just also like on display.
She was good also at like you until the very end. You didn't know if she was good or bad.
Yeah, she seemed
So,
duplicitous.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Oh yes, and they had to put the badge on the boob because she was undercover like that. So,
So
it's
stupid.
and I didn't.
What kind of undercover cop has a badge?
Every time she wants something done from Jackie Chan and Tucker, she just like shows the boobs.
She uses her charms. Yeah.
And it's like, oh, here's my bra.
It's like, I mean, good for you for being confident, but it just doesn't feel genuine in this movie. Like, it feels like a movie made by men,
Yeah.
and they thought this was funny. And, you know, it can be, but it feels exploitative.
But they did it like 3 times in a row.
Constantly.
So at the last time, it was not like if it was slightly funny and the first one,
Yeah.
like
It's actually
you cannot keep doing it.
Yes, you could do that once. It's actually a little bit like in the previous episode we talked about the not in one of the previous episodes we talked about the Blues Brothers, and that one also had this where they do a joke over and over, and it's like, you know, that's not funny. But here it has this added element of it also being kind of offensive. So the first time you can, like, an offensive joke is fine. Like, you can do offensive jokes, like, oh shit, you know, that was unexpected because we don't usually say that or
Yeah.
whatever. But if you keep doing it, then it seems like you're okay with exploiting women. At which point, you know, I'm sitting there very uncomfortably. So this movie is about counterfeiting money. That's kind
Yeah.
of the main plot.
Oh, I haven't checked if you are allowed to burn money. Please, people, if you know in the comments, because one of the themes of the movie is that the fake money, since they use a different pigment, when you burn it, it burns red, while the official money burns black.
Yeah.
But and they just like this is what the woman agent tells Tucker and Jackie Chan, and they just believe them. And I was like, did they even know that the real money like burns black? And then we weren't even sure if you're allowed to burn money. So please, if somebody knows that, can you leave it in the comments for us? Because I had my final German course exam and I forgot to look it up.
I think, actually, if we talk about filmmaking here as well for a second, like, you can't set up that the real money burns black and then never burn a real note. Like that's like Chekhov's gun. Like, maybe there's a thing where they end up like getting misdirected and they go after someone with, like, you know, genuine money, and maybe that's like the midpoint of the movie where they hit their low because they get like taken off the case or whatever. No, we see money being burned twice, and both times it burns red, and that's it.
Yeah, I don't like when characters just like accept things like with faith. And
That's the other thing. It's like, well, you don't trust this lady just because she has boobs, do you? But then we're back at that problem.
Yeah.
Anyway, did you know that the company that made all this fake money for the movie, they made like 1 million fake banknotes, got into trouble with the law because apparently some of the extras in the final scene where like all the money flies around the place picked up some of that money and tried to go buy things with it. And apparently it was somewhat convincing.
Oh my gosh, they did it very good. It was not like Monopoly money.
Yeah. Well, I mean, there's like all these like crazy rules, and I don't know the rules really, but what I heard is one of the main things is that when you're making movie money, you're not allowed to print both sides.
Oh.
Which sounds like if you watched any movie, you've seen both sides of a note. Like, what?
Maybe they just clip them together.
It's like in really old 80s movies. Sometimes you can see on the back it's just white.
Yeah.
But like, in this movie, certainly, it was clearly on both sides.
But as it would feel like they would print it, but with not the holographic stuff that you cannot really see from a movie.
But let's be honest. When you go to the kiosk and you buy something, they don't check for those things. So it has to already
I
be
always look at the
noticeably wrong.
holographic things because it's holographic.
Okay. But your
It's like the
cashier
fancy
doesn't,
magic
which is the
cards.
problem. Your cashier
Yeah.
doesn't check every single note.
Yeah.
And so I get it. Like you have to be like usually there's like it will say on the thing, instead of whatever currency of the government of the United States of America will say
Currency of Warner Brothers.
like fake money for movie purposes or something like that. Like it would sell something else. I know that for Doctor Who, like in the British Museum, I think there's like a note from a Doctor Who episode. And it says something like, this can be exchanged for 3 Satsumas or something like that, Like it's just like a weird thing to print it on, which I think is a fun idea that these companies that make prop money actually have a little fun with it.
Yes.
And at the same time, that's by, complying with the law. But yeah, this company, I think it was called ISS, I guess got a cease and desist from the Federal Bureau of Investigation or the
too
CIA or
accurate.
something. Like Secret Service showed up and was like, guys, I think they got sued for counterfeiting money or something, or investigated at least.
Well, it's still believable, people. But if you were, how it's called, the people just on set there, extras. If you were an extra on a movie, what would you steal?
Like as a prop from the movie?
Yeah.
Well, it depends on the movie, doesn't it?
Okay, pick a movie and steal something from it.
Like Memento, I would try and steal like a Polaroid. I guess Memento doesn't have extras really. But if I could get like my hands on one of the Polaroids, because I'm sure they have copies of them. Like it's not like they just have the one, and if that gets lost or something, so like that would be cool. I could have like a genuine like Memento Polaroid on my wall. How about you?
I want to be an extra in Titanic because I want to mention Titanic. No, and also because I wanted to get one of those things because they made so like the amazing details with
What
everything
things?
Everything at the blue star
White Star Line.
White Star Line, and I would just get something with White Star Line written on it.
Like a little menu or something
like
that?
a plate, yes.
Yeah.
Something like that. I think that it would be cool because it's good reconstruction.
I should probably announce the next movie on the podcast.
Oh yes, I'm very excited.
You'll be disappointed to hear that it will be Flushed Away from 2006 with Hugh Jackman and Kate Winslet, speaking of Titanic.
Oh.
And I'm
it's
looking
a
forward to
cartoon.
it. It's a great, fun movie about rats. Wouldn't you be excited?
Is it about slugs?
There are slugs in it. They sing.
Okay. Nice.
Yeah.
Okay, maybe I'm excited. We will discover it in 2 weeks.